All right, part 2, creating a Republican culture. So this is going to be section 2 in chapter 8. Okay, so like I said, we're talking a lot about social aspects. So you have an emerging middle class. So we're very familiar with the middle class. It's where most of us sit. Whether it's lower or upper, that is where a majority of the country is lower, upper, middle class. All right, so it starts to merge during this time period. You have publicly celebrated political equality and social mobility, which is still available today. And again, that is not European at all. European visitors viewed the U.S. as different culturally and socially from Europe. And I would say that's still true today. Our culture is very different than that of what's going on in Europe, and it makes us unique in that way. Let's see, we have no aristocracy. However, social division does exist, but generally it is based off of money. Some use their talents to achieve personal advancements. Some are going to criticize the nouveau riche, basically people with new money, who seem to grow their own wealth and rose from nothing. That's the American dream. That is, work really hard, make a lot of money, and become rich. That's the American dream. There are many people who strive for that, and many people who accomplish it. And as we continue on, we're going to talk about more and more people who lived the true American dream. Benjamin Franklin is probably one of our first big examples of a man who comes from nothing and becomes one of the most important men in the country of his time. Let's see. Reality was the great majority of those who achieved success during this time period, though, are, of course, white and male. Women are not out there starting businesses and making lots of money. African Americans are slaves. Immigrants often are working at the very basic jobs, and especially manufacturing comes in. They're working in factories and things like that. And they are not earning the wealth at this time period. Now today, pretty much, despite your circumstances, you get the education, you work really hard, you have the opportunity to move up in social class, which basically means you're earning more money. So laws in the new nation and cultural rules long existent in Europe kept women and African American from advancing. I just said that as white men did. Race and gender restrictions are written into law, keeping women and black men and women from being able to vote and own property. So, although there's nothing in the Constitution that says women or black women can't vote, there are going to be laws state by state that will prevent them from doing so. Let's see, women especially with property. Politicians are going to use biology and custom to make their discriminatory arguments. So you're going to have a lot of division and a lot of laws be put in place, and that is why we had to have the 15th Amendment, and we had to have the 19th Amendment, because there were laws in various states that kept people from voting. All right, so this is a look at our map, 1800 when this time period starts to 1830. So you can see property qualifications for voting in the states that are green on the left, taxpayer qualifications, so if you pay taxes, you can vote, and then universal white male suffrage. So there are a couple of states that are practicing that, which sounds crazy, but if there's land owning properties, there's a lot of poor white men who could not vote. All right, by 1830, the number of states that have a property qualification are down to 3. You have several that are just taxpayer, so a lot of those originally land ones are now tax-paying ones, and there are several more that have universal white suffrage, so all men who live there can vote, all white men, sorry, need to be clear, white men. All right, so you're going to hear a lot about Republican motherhood, Republican marriages. So there's debates over authority within the American households. They're going to mirror the controversy over women's political rights. So basically, Americans, they don't arrange marriages for their children after the colonial period. They let them choose their own partners. They are influenced by sentimentalism and love and things like that. The importance of feeling or appreciation of God, nature, and fellow humans. So you're going to have consent-based compassionate, companionate marriages. So people choosing to get married to certain people. They're based on intimacy and celebrated falling in love. These, in theory, were supposed to be more Republican, which means people are equal, but they're really not. So even though women and men are choosing who they're marrying, there is still a very much authoritarian role for the husband. After 1800, divorce petitions cited emotional turmoil in marriages. So that's going to be something new, because before you married who you were told to get married to, and you stayed married. Divorce was very taboo in any circle. So there were very few reasons you could actually get a divorce. But you're going to start getting them for emotional turmoil. Several states are going to expand to the legal grounds for divorce, and that is going to include actually drunkenness and personal cruelty. Again, these are not things that you could have necessarily gotten a divorce for prior to this time period. All right, so you're going to have later marriages because people are looking for their true love and wanting to get married for love, etc., etc. So it's going to limit the size of the family, because remember when we talked about colonial times and women getting married young at like 18 and stuff, or 16 or 17, they have a lot more time for pregnancy, so they had a lot more children. So getting married later in life, there is going to be a decline in the size of the family and in the birth rate. Women accepted greater responsibilities for family welfare, as Republican mothers are charged with educating children. It would have been hard for many women to have educated their children prior to this time period, because not a lot of women were educated themselves. But now it's going to fall on the woman to be in charge of educating her children and making sure her children are properly educated, and preparing her sons to be virtuous Republican citizens and making sure they get all the education that goes with that. All right. So 2 modes of parenting. We're talking about what's going on in Europe, what's going on here in the United States. Unlike Europeans, who generally leave their property to their eldest son, Americans are actually encouraged to divide their property equally. Parenting among the middle class appears to be more permissive than traditional European practices. You have Yemen and tenant farmers tending toward a stricter approach with authoritarian practices, basically telling their kids what to do. But your more middle class are going to kind of give their kids more freedom. After the revolution, emphasis on public schooling is going to increase significantly. Among the elite, the importance of primary, secondary, and potentially college training was emphasized. It's still not a requirement to go to school yet. Most American families need the income their children could provide, so if you could afford to send your kids to school, that doesn't mean you have to pay for school, but it means that you can afford for your kid not to be working or helping out at the home. All right. So farmers, artisans, laborers, they want their children to know how to read and write, do basic math, but they're really not going to have a lot of use for anything beyond that because they're going to need these kids to be working. Until the 1820s, few children attended school for extended periods of time. After the 1820s, you've got legislators including provisions for public schools in local areas. And again, if the school is nearby and it's easy to get to, it is going to increase school attendance. So we're going to start getting a cultural independence. So obviously prior to the Revolutionary War, we weren't producing a lot of literature or anything like that. There's artwork and things like that, but we don't have like an American culture that's producing literature and stuff. Noah Webster, he's going to argue that education should raise the nation's intellectual reputation. So basically you start educating your population and you are going to start getting books and other types of research and things, science and technology, etc. The literary culture in the United States was slow to catch on. Only Washington Irving was popular outside of the U.S. with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. 1830s and 40s is an American Renaissance, and you'll get people like Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and other poets of the time. This is a painting of women's education. So they're looking at maps, they're reading. You also would have women being educated to run a home. So you're going to get that type of education as well. So it'll definitely vary between what a woman is educated to do and what a man is educated to do. All right, so that ends that section, and I will catch up with you soon. I think the next section is about slavery, so that's always interesting. Not fun, but interesting. So catch you soon. Bye. Happy morning, afternoon, evening. whenever time.